Feet hip width apart, then just settle down in your feet, turning in the centre of your body. A couple of slow, gentle breaths. And just let the movement, your posture, breathing, whatever, sort of settle your attention. So there's always lots going on around us. Tai Chi helps us just to get a sense of what's going on inside as well as outside. And just helps to sort of cultivate this very quiet, calm quality. Quite heavy in your arms, so shoulders nice and relaxed, not trying to lift your arms. Using the middle of your body to move your arms. There's no sort of like just set pattern here. And from the side, you see my weight goes forwards, my hips drops back. I just sit into my hips. And so that helps to drop my center of gravity. So there's less tightening, less stiffening in the middle of my body. Now turn your hands palm out, raise them up a little. You feel that your elbows are just hanging down. Have your hands too high. And just drop your hands down. It's always worth giving some time every now and then to the technical side of the posture. In the last few weeks, I've been talking about this intuitive grasp of what we're looking for, but you can't separate it out from the actual physical structure. So your weight is forwards. You could either think of the sort of focus of your weight being just behind the ball of each foot, or if it's easier for you to think in this way, you can think of 70% of your weight in the front half of your feet. Either of those will give you this slight feeling of going forwards, and that feeling is neutralized, sort of harmonized, I suppose you could say, by just allowing your hips to drop back. So we sit back, but our hips have dropped back and that sort of settles us, but our weight is still forwards. So for me, one of the interesting things about this posture is that, and as I stand here, I can stand quite still. And my weight is going down into my feet and so on and so forth. And yet, with hardly any effort at all, just a slight nudge forwards of my weight, I take a step. So as I stand in that posture, I've got almost enough energy to take a step with. And when we take a step, what we would normally do, it's not how we do it in Tai Chi, is we would go forwards like that. So there's this lengthening in your back as you do that. And as you rest in this posture, you begin to feel that your back is a little bit longer, a little bit broader than it felt before. It's the side of the body, the part of the body that supports the front of the body. And this has a very energetic feeling to it, I think. You know, we can feel if you're slumped in a chair like that, you'll fall asleep, or you're kind of like this, and oh, can't be bothered to do anything. And then we talk about pulling ourselves up. We're not pulling ourselves up, but we are coming to that upright position where there's just that little bit more of a feeling of energy in our back, in our upper body, supporting the front of the body, so things like breathing and that will come more easily. Your hips dropping down, and a slight pull in with your chin, raising the back of your skull. So this lengthening of the spine. You know, if you look at this, for instance, this is all kind of droopy and the kind of thing. I draw my head in and I let the tail of my spine drop, and suddenly we've got more of a straight line there. We go from this to this, or to scrunched up to this is the basic idea. Spine is sometimes referred to as the pearl necklace. Hence, I've got the beads there to show you. So letting your hips drop down, back a little bit more, soft in your knees, and pushing up and sinking down. Expanding and contracting. And then wild goose. Heart in the clouds. And dragon plucks the stars from the sky. One more round of this. Then pushing in 4 directions. So all the time we're going through these movements, and some of them are, this is quite a tricky aspect. We want to maintain that feeling I described in our back, that sense of the weight being slightly forwards. As soon as we turn in our body, both of those can be easily lost. So we need to really think about how we're making the turn. It's a small movement, small change in our hips and our waist. Not twisting our shoulders around, and just comfortable with the idea that when we turn a little way in the middle of the body, then like the hub of a bicycle wheel turning, our arms and our hands, like the ends of the spokes in the wheel, will move much further. We're not striving or straining to get our hands to move. So that's an extension of an idea that comes from that very first swinging exercise when I said about letting the center of your body move your arms. One more round. And then circling palms. Remember, 70% of your weight in the front half of your feet. Hips just dropping back. That slight little give, that slight curve in your knees. Then if it's comfortable, adding the turn. Remember that feeling in your back. Try not to do this in such a way that you feel your shoulders or your upper back stiffening up, gripping. And change sides. Expanding. Contracting. Remind yourself of that feeling of space within the body that we get when we're no longer gripping tight just to remain upright and to move. That's dependent on our alignment with the pull of gravity, the sinking of our center of gravity. Adding the turn. Increasingly strong focus of attention in the area between hips and waist, or pelvis and waist, really. The center part of your body, when it moves, your body, the rest of your body moves with it. Now sinking down, rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. This time, the movement in that center part of your body is a forwards and backwards rolling movement. Sink down, hips going back. So your hips going back, that moves your upper body, shoulders, head, arms and hands, guided by the center. One more time. And then combining the horizontal and the vertical movements in the center of your body, polishing the table. One more round, one more to each side. And as you come back to the upright, once again, just swinging on your hips. And that movement, move your shoulders, shoulders, move your arms. You may even find that there's a little bit of movement of your weight. Actually, there's meant to be in this exercise, but it's interesting to note that when we turn in the center of our body, it doesn't just affect the upper body, it affects up the lower part of our body as well. And just come to a halt and stand for a few minutes. Your legs are showing. So we're looking to develop a tone and indeed a quality of movement in our body that is described as sung in Tai Chi terms. And there's a range of meanings for sung. But soften, elastic, springy, calm, releasing, all of those kind of ideas are there. Relax is in there somewhere as well, but it's, in and of itself, it's not that useful a term. But really what we're doing is trying to find labels for what we're experiencing, because when we can label something, sometimes it's easier to kind of get it back. So the basic change that we're looking for, if I come closer there, you see, if I grip tight there, that is actually quite uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable in my fingers, my wrists. I can feel the tightness going up through my body. If I do this, if I just release, you can see there's a little gap there. So it's as though I'm holding something very delicate, maybe a tame bird or pet, like a guinea pig or something like that, or maybe some kind of delicate object. So I'm wrapping my fingers around it rather than gripping tight. The change from this to this is the change that I'm talking about. I'm not doing this from this to that. That's relaxed. And that might be a useful thing to do, but it's not what we're doing. We're retaining the shape, we're retaining the structure, we're retaining the usefulness of the structure, but we're just introducing a degree of elasticity. So this, pick whatever term you like to apply to that. It could be soften, could be releasing, letting go. As I say, whatever I managed to come up with. Some people say it's like a cat. Cats are said to be very strong, like an inflatable balloon or ball, a soft rubber ball or something, like water. Again and again, it's an extensive family of terminology. What's important isn't the exact meaning of those words, because they're all variable, but actually whether that term is the one that brings you back to this sort of awareness. Because when we're doing a movement, and we'll do the bear play next, it's a fairly complicated movement. You're concentrating on the movement. You want something that's just going to remind you, oh yeah, this is how I've got to feel. And when we're walking down the road, we're not thinking about Tai Chi all the time, but it's there in the background. And so we kind of prod our memory. So in this position, remember, hips sinking just a little bit. Weight transferring from side to side. Yeah, again, you're only going a little way here. You're only going to about 60% of your weight in the leg at this point. But as you do, just let your body turn. Come up slightly and drop down in the supporting leg. Again, so it's like your body travels in this sort of like semicircular fashion. Your hands on your hips. And just let the movement pick up. Try and soften in your back, so that your spine can move freely. And now what's happening is that your hips are making this sort of, it's a curving movement. I won't call it a circle because it's not a true circle, but they go, you can just see my hands doing this. And our shoulders begin to mirror that. So as I come up here, my hip comes up and forwards, my shoulder rolls over forwards. And then as my hip goes down the bottom of the circle, my shoulder mirrors that as well. So now, with this movement, you can see my elbows are moving. And all we're going to do to go into the full exercise is here, the hand comes out, pushed out by your elbow, following the same circular type pattern. So this is bear play. At this position, you should imagine a line: foot, knee, hip, shoulder, elbow, wrist, all on that same line. Don't have your hand across there. So there's a bit of an opening in your chest here. And you come back the other way. nice and smooth, but quite strong. That elasticity. If I haven't got one here. In the last class I did, they had these, these balls that you get in gyms. They're quite big, and you can bounce up and down on them, but they're quite soft. So there's a strength in there that we can get without losing that supple quality within the body. Strength doesn't have to be rock hard. In fact, quite often that's not as strong. Do one more on each side. Now from this position here in your left foot, this time, instead of turning to the right, turn to the left. Turn your hand palm up, move across, sink into the front foot, and this time just see how your arm comes up. Turn your hand palm down, turn the right hand palm up, and across into the other side. This is hitting the ball in front of the shoulder. So just a slight change. The key change between Bear Play and this one, hitting the ball in front of the shoulder, was one thing, which was the turning the other way. If this was Bear Play, I would be like this. Because it's hitting the ball, I'm like this. A slight change in the hand, but nothing very much. Without the change in the center, there's no point in changing the hands. So it starts to show us how significant the center part of the body is to our movement and to the focusing of our attention. Note also that with this exercise, your heels start to come off the ground. So again, we feel that connection between the turning, the movement of our weight, and what's happening in our feet and our legs. So again, one more on each side. And we're going to change cow gazes at the moon. Same thing in your legs. Let your hands drop down and swing round. And back the other way. One more time. And again, just swing around. Just letting yourself drift to a halt. And seeing if you can just let your body find its sort of natural point of equilibrium. give your legs a shake. So now changing our stance. We maintain the hip width of our step. If our feet are too narrow, it just becomes really awkward. I mean, you can do it. And you know, there are exercises where we do this and so on and so forth, but it is more awkward. So imagine you go see a film, or you know, or even just to go around to see a friend, and you go to sit down and you realize the chair isn't quite right for you. Maybe it's too small, maybe it's old and there's a bit wobbly or something like that. All sorts of things can go wrong. It's really hard to settle in. Yeah, and then if it's a film, and then a couple of days later somebody says, "What was the film like?" I said, "Oh, the film was great. I couldn't get comfortable." It becomes a kind of major thing. So our ability to work towards, to cultivate this quality of song and everything that is implied in that, and to maintain it, is very, very dependent on good structure. These qualities, the softening and the rest of it, they're very important, but they don't enable you to defy the laws of physics. And if you're here, then gravity's pulling you that way. And if you're standing like this, then gravity's going to make you do that. It's a very simple equation. So thinking about the structure of the stance, turn your left foot out and you step straight forwards with the right. See where my foot is. From here to here is hip width. And in terms of length, maybe a little bit longer, but no shorter. Because what we want to try and do now, so shuffling around, is to try and encourage our weight to move comfortably from one foot to another. So remember, your target as you move to each foot is the front part of the foot, which is just behind the ball of the foot. You'll find that that's more accessible going forwards than backwards. It's trickier going back. When you go forwards, you want to be able to get about 60% of your weight in the leg without straining. Too long a step, and I'm starting to lean. So that upright stance is still very much there. Shoulders in line with hips. When I go into my back foot, same thing, but perhaps up to 70% of my weight. As your weight goes into your foot, feel what's happening between your hip and the sole of your foot. Is there somewhere where you're kind of locking up, straining? It's very common to find that in the knee, but it could be elsewhere. That will block the movement of your weight. So if you're tightening around your knee, actually what you're doing is you're forcing your knee to carry a lot of the weight of your body, which is an unkind thing to do to your knee. And then settle back, raise your toes, turn your front foot out a little bit so that opens your hip. Go forwards, just push your back knee forward so your heel comes up. And when we do that, we're able to maintain our structure, but get a bit more weight into the leg. You see how I just move a little bit more? So that gradually more of the weight goes into the supporting leg. We get to a point where there's hardly any weight left in the other leg. And that's when we can begin to just contract the leg and draw the foot in. Now, when we go to step out, it's important to step out into the correct place. You push your foot out and to the side. If it's the back foot, the ball of the foot goes down first, followed by your heel. If it's the front foot, it's the opposite way around. Move the weight Draw the foot in, heel, toes, and then the weight. Note that I'm not trying to balance. I'm looking to root down to drop my center of gravity, to align myself over the leg, and to develop what I would think of as stability. Shake out. So this alignment of the body that we talk about, you know, if you think of, if you were going to put a washing line in your garden, you'd pay particular attention, and you'd get the point. You wouldn't just ram it into the ground like that and say, okay, we'll put some string on it and hang the clothes on it, because you know what's going to happen. It's going to fall over. You'd be very particular to get it upright, and then you'll dig it in. So think about how you're maintaining that upright stance, not straining your shoulders, because that pulls your center of gravity up. Again, if there were a heavy weight on top of the pole for the washing line, it would be more difficult than if that heavy weight was down at the bottom. So we want to drop our center of gravity to help with that sense of stability. So left foot forwards. So we almost always have to approach these ideas in terms of this and then this and then this, a kind of linear sequence. But actually, they're like a family. That quality of sung allows your center of gravity to drop. An awareness of the structure of your body allows sung to develop. Dropping your center of gravity has a profound effect on your structure. These are elements that should be seen as part of the whole picture that interact with each other rather than separate things. Raising your toes and your heel. And then stepping in. And then just take a few steps through, remembering to widen your step, that your foot comes in and swings out. And big power. The movement of our weight is a powerful drive. When we're able to move with the structure and with that quality of sung, so we can think of the springiness in the legs. Again, think of getting one of those big balls and bouncing up and down. You drop down on it and it goes boing, it pushes you up. Think of being on a trampoline or something like that. There's all sorts of images and ideas like that we can make use of. And then, so when we sink down in the back leg, it pushes us forwards, and we want to a structure that allows the space within the body to allow that movement to move. Then we start to bring our arms and our hands in to the movement. So it's very important how we do that. Our arms and our hands are moved by that movement of our weight, by the rest of our body. It's not that they're not important, it's just that they come last in sequence in the chain of movements. So have your right foot forwards. I'm going to do it from the side so you can see. Have your weight back. Notice my arm hanging down. I move forwards, but I leave my hands behind. And then as I settle into the front foot, they draw through. And the same idea going back. Your arms following your body, so the shoulders are moved by the movement of your weight. The shoulders pull on your elbows, your wrists, and then your fingers. A certain amount of momentum will build up, but also just be aware of what's happening in the chest and your upper back. One more time. Slight change, just bringing your hand in more in front of your hips, turning them palm forwards, push and wave. So this is a much more structured exercise than the previous one. There's a definite shape that we're maintaining in our arms as we go forwards and backwards. But we're not straining for that shape. And we're not thrusting with our arms. It's still that wave-like movement, and it's like the wave just pushes your arms forwards and then slightly up. This time you go back. Again, let your hands drop down and turn towards your front foot. Let the arms swing out, similar to the wild goose. This is wind blows the willows. So now we also are very aware of another element in Tai Chi that's also very dependent, very mixed in with these other qualities, the elasticity in the body, which is expansion and contraction. A regular part of the rhythm of the movement. This time when you go back, let the turning movement also raise your front toes a little bit. Again, you can have the front foot slightly turned down. Same thing here, your heel is drawn up. So we see how the center of our body helps to move our feet, and as before, stepping in. So you can do what I'm doing at the moment, which is just gently placing the toes on the ground. Or if you prefer, rotate your hip a little bit more to bring your knee up, give you a slightly higher step. Don't strain to lift your leg. Another aspect is this is that you rotate your hip to bring your knee up, but also to change the angle of the foot. So use whatever combination of those is comfortable for you. You could, for instance, just do this. You get that rotation. It might be a good way to practice it to begin with. One more time. And shake out. When I do that, when I raise my foot, and when I rotate the leg, I try and remain level across the pelvis. If I do this, I'm going to fall over. Once the pelvis goes out of line, then once it's no longer level, then our body's beginning to tilt. I know that in some movements we do that, but we don't do those movements standing on one leg, at least not to begin with. So we're trying to do this. We're trying to rotate the hip vertically. You can see the way my hand is moving when my hip rotates vertically like that. It raises my knee up. And that's your hip, the ball of the hip joint moving inside the socket, which is in the pelvis. The ball is like the bit of the hinge of a door that's attached to the door. The socket is like the bit of the hinge that's attached to the frame. Yeah, when you open a door, you don't want the frame to move. Likewise, this movement here is a similar rotation, but it's more on that line there. If I do this, straight away, it becomes more difficult. So bear that in mind. Try those exercises on the opposite side. Fisherman castanet. I try and avoid the term balance. For me, balance has a different aspect in Tai Chi. And also because when we think of balancing, we're thinking, well, I'm already falling in one direction. I find a way to balance that fall so it doesn't go any further. Whereas in Tai Chi, I think what we're cultivating is a quality of stability. Fisherman castanet. One more time. And then cushion wave. Sink back and turn. Wind blows the willows. Even the expansion comes as a result of the sinking down. Again, think about the ball. You push down on it to get it to go up. You drop it downwards and it bounces off the ground. Using your toes and your heel. and stepping in. Again, just see what feels comfortable. This movement, when we bring our feet up like this, is actually very strong in our hip, various reasons. So be careful with this, don't do too many, because you don't want to start to sort of really inflame the tendons and the ligaments. But whichever way you're doing it this time, step through. This is dragonfly skims the water. And then going back. One more time. And shake. Lovely. Open your hands together. And tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Into one shoulder, your arm, the other side, and your back. Down your hips. Your legs. Light on your belly. And the upper part of the chest. Shake out. Now, there are a couple of exercises that we do, rowing a boat and polishing the table, where we come out of this vertical line. We do it by pushing our hips back. But what that means is to come back to the upright position, we let our hips go down. So that's very different to leaning forwards. So when, not if, but when we find ourselves slightly out of line, one of the things that we want to be able to do is to allow the hips to drop back. So, this is obviously when we do Tai Chi itself, we're looking for very smooth movements, very calm, very graceful movements. But actually, in practical terms, if you're out there and you sort of trip or stumble, it doesn't have to look good. All you need to know is that you do that, and then instead of going like this and maybe saving yourself, maybe falling, who knows, actually rather than that, you do this. Just that very simple there is the thing that can help you to keep upright. That's the thing that draws your head and shoulders up. It gives you the possibility of letting your center of gravity drop. So in very practical terms, it's very straightforward, if you like, to remain upright. Quite difficult. In practice, even when we're doing the exercises, that alignment and everything, the song and everything that's associated with it are lost all the time. The thing is to get them back, to recognize that we are losing it. So in this last exercise, Embrace Tiger, Return to Mountain, pushing up, and round about here, just be aware of the pull of gravity on your hips, beginning to draw you back, drawing your hands in, drawing your shoulders down, and just dropping you down. So your legs push you up through the pull of gravity, but as the pull of gravity takes over, just a willingness to yield through your hips, through your lower back, and that would eventually bring you back down. One more round. And rest. Lovely. Thank you very much. So enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. And hopefully see you soon. So let's get